Hey everybody, this is Dark Guards. We're back with another video. So while I'm waiting on Grogger to pop back up, we're going to quickly try to knock out one of the scripts I need for the tank game right now. So with the tank game, and I've skipped quite a few things that we've done since the last video. I'm not going to go over it all in detail, but effectively we've got a ton more detail for the tank game level, if the game will actually zoom out here. So we've got basically vehicles now done, we've got vehicles with cargo, we've got some basically barricades, a point which we're going to do a loadout menu here later. Hopefully I'll record that. I don't know if we'll get to it. Some crates, barrels, etc, etc. The tank is actually done and works. We skipped actually getting the weapons function on those, but I'll talk about that in detail with another video. What we're going to work on for this one is these little crystals down here. Now these are not the final textures for this. Of course that's basically what I've said for everything at this point. But I went ahead and I quickly threw together some textures just so I could get this concept started. Now when we were working on getting crystals kind of going for the earlier part, and I can actually show, I think we still have the text with this, we were trying to figure out how we wanted to get these crystals going, because a lot of the levels are going to have crystals, and the first crystal we started with was just a very basic pointing up in the air kind of prism looking thing. It was ugly, and I couldn't think of how I wanted to get the crystals to function, and then Morton, who's our normal text artist for the mods, suggested why not just create like a flower pattern of random crystals. And he's kind of right, this actually does work really well, and what we've got with this actual crystal is we've got 3 different layers of crystals actually going, and I can actually toggle these on and off so I can show each layer individually. So we've basically got a base layer that's got a whole bunch of really large crystals, and we layer over the top of that with a little bit medium more layer, and layer over top of that with a much more kind of faded out layer. Now the ideal I want to get to is to start generating these via scripts. We don't want to manually make a whole bunch of crystals and toss them out in the level and get them looking all right. Although we will have occasional manually made crystals, specifically when we want to do really decorative scenes. I think level 3 is going to have a ton of these in it because it's mainly a travel mission, so the decorations and the things you see are going to be the more important things at level rather than just the combat, even though this is meant to be a combat-driven game. But we are in the first level. I did throw some crystals out here just because I kind of wanted to play around with them, and this has turned into my kind of testing level. This level is going to probably need a lot of work, but it's just going to be one of those things that's going to evolve over time. But for this one, we're going to get working on these scripts to get these randomized. We're not going to do the full script-driven generated crystal right away, but we're going to approach it step by step. The first step I want to work on is creating a random scale script. Now this is incredibly simple because we really don't have to do much work for this. Believe it or not, I think what we're going to be doing is after what we're going to do, this is going to be the last thing, so we're going to disable self, because we don't want this rerunning on the thing, we don't want it getting ticked or anything, so there's no point in the script existing after we're done with it. So it's going to trigger, and then once it's triggered, it's done. I believe we just need local transformation. Let me actually Google this one real quick. I started this video without really thinking about how to actually do this. So, pull my window down here. So we go Unity, change scale. I just want to get the, so it's transformation local scale is what we're looking for. And with this, we just really want to basically randomize a little bit of number to it. So we'll do this, and we're going to need to create a method. We'll create something that returns a float. And we'll just call this create random number. We'll pass in a float called our range. And I'm trying to remember how to do this. There's actually a random built into Unity. I'm just going to Google it real quick. I end up Googling this almost every time I look up it. And if you guys are making your own stuff, just Google things. Don't feel afraid to actually look up what you're looking for. So there should be... Yeah, so it's random.range, that's what I was looking for. And with random.range, what you do is you pass back 2 numbers. And what I end up usually doing, and when I end up doing this, is I end up doing negative range to range. And that should give us a decent scale. And what we're going to do is we're going to do an additive for this. We could theoretically multiply. But the problem with multiplying is that we could end up with a really small number, so I think the just adding will be a lot better. So we're going to do basically plus equal. The issue with this is we do need to figure out what way we want to scale these. So I think what we're going to do, and let me check to see if the vector is read-only. So we've got local scale. It doesn't it doesn't say if we can access. Let's see if you can access vector 3. It's been a while since I've actually messed with vector 3. Is X a read only? Yeah, okay, you can modify it. So I'm theoretically thinking that we can modify this. So on our crystals, let's see if we can grab our game object here. And these have a lot of crystals in them. So we've got our game object here, and we've got the scale. And I'm thinking it's the X direction is the only one we really care about, to be honest, for these right now. I'm going to set them up for X and Y. We're going to ignore Z because Z is going to do nothing because it's pointing straight down into the map. It's our depth check. But if we do this, this should... You know what we're going to need to do is we need to duplicate this and then drag this crystal up out and get this moved over here so we can actually see it. I'm going to reset its rotation, so we got a nice up down rotation, and I'm going to fix its opaquency so we can actually see it. So what I was talking about, these are really basic textures. I need to add detail to them. My ultimate plan, if I can get this working, is to take the lightweight pipe render system that Unity has and create a shader to make a nice glow effect on these. So it looks like it's refracting light as it passes through and give you that nice, beautiful visual. I don't think we're going to get to that before we end up releasing the game, but it'll be something to look forward to after we get it going. Anyway, so let's reset this down to its base scale. Now let's make sure, I'm going to go over here and reset this guy real quick. And just redo his scale at a second. How do we... Yeah, revert. Now we'll reset its scale back up, just in case I accidentally edited it. So we've got this crystal. So let's see what happens if we do that. So X is our width in this case. So that means Y is our length. So we do want both of these, but we just now need to make sure we know which one is actually which. And we're going to come up here and we're going to create variables here. And this will be the easiest way to go about this is we'll do X random and we'll set this to 0. So default both to 0, that way if you don't want random, you just set it that way. And then we'll do this guy by essentially calling our random range. And we shouldn't need to actually do any checks on this because if you pass in... Oh, actually, no, this is going to error if it passes 0. I think this actually does complain. So we'll do this. This is probably not the best way to do a 0 check, but it will work. I mean, actually, what we can do is if it's greater than 0. Because you shouldn't have a negative random here. We get that going. This will create our Y. And we don't care about Z because it's a 2D game, so we don't need to worry about that. It's like it creates a lot of random. This should compile. And what we'll do is we'll attach this. Here we go, random scale. We also have some random delta colors and stuff that I've played with earlier. I haven't got those to work just right, but with this we actually do want to do this thing. I've created a list of this just so we can get things working. Cannot convert type, local scale, consider storing value in a temporary variable. Not modify a value type. So it is going to not let us do that. I'm going to say local scale may not be what I think it is. So let's go back here. It does say it's a vector 3. But then this is saying line 17. Cannot modify a value. Return type of value. Unity transform local scale. Consider storing. Okay, so what I think we're going to have to do. Let's take a look at this. We are in the 2018-2 document, so this is the latest stuff. I say we're going to have to just do this real quick. It's a bit wasteful, but we're only doing this at the start, so it's not that big of a deal. So this is our X right here, so then we just need to do 0.0. And this is going to be our Y, so we need to put the 0, comma, and create another one. Really simple script, but we don't need to worry about performance because it's going to get called once. It does mean there'll be a slight delay. We can check for the delay with the frame rate counter that I actually have in the game now. We actually do a frame rate counter. It's not the most accurate, but it does work. So, plus equal cannot be applied to type of float. Oh wait, did I forget to move? Yeah, I forgot to move the X. Wait for it to compile. Worst case, if this doesn't work, then we just assign a new vector group. Okay, that worked. So I should create a random, and what we're going to do just to test this is I'm going to put like a really high numbers in this. And then what we'll do as well is we're going to drag it right over the camera, that when we start, we don't even have to move. So put it right there. Because then it'll be right there in the camera. So when we hit play, yeah, it works. Okay, so it's a bit strange, but that does do exactly what we wanted to do. So now the next trick we want to get it going is we need a random rotation. So we got the scale going, rotation is the next object. The other thing we might want to come back through here and do is add some kind of seed mechanic, where there's something that prevents it from being truly random. We use this in ICBM Classic to create the render effects for the red matter. For those who haven't actually seen the red matter, I probably have a picture somewhere. Yeah, let's see if we can get a picture just so I can explain this a little better. Actually, hold on, let's run back there. So, for the red matters, this ray system here is actually generated by a random seed. But because we keep the seed very consistent, it always looks like it's rendering the same spot. We could theoretically do this for the crystals, so the crystals have a random to them, but the random is very consistent. It prevents itself from becoming truly bizarre, and what it lets us do is effectively assign a number to each of the crystals, so that way when the map loads, the crystal will randomize, but every time you load it, it will be the same exact random every single time, so that way you get that difference between the crystals, but you don't get such a bizarre, shocking difference that every time you die and restart the map or something, everything looks different. It would actually pull you out of that immersion type of behavior. We're not going to do that this episode because I'm going to have to do some research to see if C# has that same ability as Java does, because how Java does it is you create a new random object with a seed, and then you just keep reusing that object over and over again as you do all your randoms. Anyways, so we got that, so let's do the random rotation now. Very simple scripts, but these scripts have a lot of potential, and there's a reason why I'm going through the trouble of actually making these recyclable objects, is that I can then take this same exact script and say I wanted to make some random boulders that fell down a hill, or make some trees or whatever, I can throw the same script on there. So we'll create another script here, and we're going to call this one random rotation. And it's literally just going to be the same script. So we'll literally just copy this entire script. The only difference is instead of modifying the scale, we're just going to modify the local rotation, which I think literally we could just do. I want to say we could do this, but I think we do have to create a new vector. Let me check this. I was looking at this the other day because we had a problem with the tank spawning, where if you rotated the tank before putting all the child objects on it, it would mess up the local rotation, and I clicked the wrong document. It's transform.rotate, it's transform rotation, rotate towards. I really do want, oh, I didn't, it all spelled out right. Local rotation. So I'd say there is a local rotation. You can see I've opened the doc here. So it does use a quaternion. This is the reason I really don't like messing with rotations. There's an easier way to do this. So we can rotate the object by calling transform.rotate. And rotate the object around its local by 1 degree per second. So we don't really care about the time, but we do want basically this part right here. We want up though, because our game by default points up. So we want this part. Or wait, does this want the axis or does it want the... That's y-axis, x-axis. This is where the fun part begins. Is that we gotta figure out what axis we want. So, if up and down is your y... No, because we're gonna be rotating around the z-axis is what we want to rotate around. I wish we could just define we want to rotate around the Z, because this is literally, if we click the crystal, I only want the Z to move because we don't actually use the X and the Y in the game because they're different annotations. But it looks like it wants to use a vector system for this. And on our screen space, I believe up is this way. That's what I think it is. Well, we could use vector 2, maybe. Let's check out the mouse script. The mouse script seems to work just fine with this. What does it use? Oh, it just completely ignores everything. We could do this right here. This would work just fine. Because what we could do is we can pull the original rotation. It would be a little funky, but at this point, we don't want to be sitting here wasting a ton of time. So we've got that. Z-axis is the only thing we care about, so we want this right here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable, so float z equals that. We'll put this in here. This way the code's a little easier to read. And we also want to be able to go and grab this .z plus that. So that way we get our correct variable. This does mean we only need to have one variable in here called rotation. Do that. And to be honest, what we could probably just do is remove that, and that just basically simplifies the code. And to make it clean, we'll do basically that, but we need to format. As far as I understand, that doing the next line shouldn't cause any performance issues, but I'm not too familiar with C#, more do Java. I know Java will inline stuff like this. So this looks good. This should random rotate. We forgot something. Rotation, 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 rotation. Let's see. Random rotation, line 14. And we're going to set this by default to 5. Yeah, that'll work. Let it compile for a second. There we go. So now we should be able to stick it on a sprite, and let's get rid of this huge scale discrepancy. And then what we want to do is we're going to add another script here, random rotate, and drag our object on here. Now again, the reason why we're actually dragging an object on here rather than just grabbing the object we're using is that we do want to be specific about what objects we use. That way we can individually scale the layers and ensure the layers scale at their own sizes and rates. As well, we could say we want to scale the parent object or whatever and get everything going the way we do it. Because we do need to make sure the hitbox does scale with the size of the sub-object. So in reality, what we're going to probably end up using the scale down here is we'll probably make sure the width actually can't go any higher than 2, and we'll say this can't go any higher than 3 to give that nice look to it. Anyways, to get the check the rotation, we're going to high value on that, and then we'll hit play to see what happens. Something tells me that's not rotated the right way. And let's, we can check this by unmaximizing. Move and play again. Hit play again just to see what it does. Yeah, it's rotating the wrong axis. So we got our new crystal here. Oh, it actually is rotating the z-axis, but the scale is really weird. So it's not the rotation that's messing up. So what did we mess up with the scale? Oh, we have a negative value. So this might be something too important that we might want to have it only be positive. Yeah, let's make this only be, because it would work from the design perspective a lot better by having it only be positive. Because then if you want something that has a negative potential, what you could do is just shrink the object down to start with and then increase the amount of scale you could do. So you get the same effect with less problems. So that should fix. Of course, we gotta wait for the game to compile. I do love the ability that it actively compiles and you can actually actively even reload your scene. The downside is it will freeze the app up while it compiles. I don't think there's any way they can fix that though. Although having the ability maybe to turn off the compile when you manually compile would be useful. I can't tell how many times I've bounced back and forth between the scene and the editor or my notepad. It resulted in some really weird behavior. Yeah, it looks like it's working. So we got some rotation off that, and we got some scale off that. So now that those scripts are working, let's go ahead and delete our test object and actually go apply this to a real object here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy one of the crystals. Yeah, so we'll duplicate this guy. Drag him out into the scene so I can easily find it. Reset its rotation. And we want to drag this all the way back to the camera. Because we want to see how this behaves now with a full script attached. And how we'll do this is we'll attach a random rotation to the base. Then we'll attach all three of these objects to it, which I should have locked that before I do that. So we're going to rotate the base objects, and we'll say 10 degrees would be a good rotation for this. We do want to make sure this has a negative and positive too, that way we get a nice rotation out of it. So we'll get that rotation going. We don't really want to scale these though, so we'll add the scale scripts to the child objects. So add component, and we'll get our random scale going. This is also where that random color would come into play, but let's get one step at a time. So get this into our list. And this is our first layer, which is our bigger layer. I really just want to scale these by, let's say, 1.2 and maybe by 0.3. We don't want a huge scale because when you're in game and actually looking at these are much bigger than they are in our camera view. You gotta actually switch over. Well, I said that and then you could pop over and it doesn't look that big. But there's a difference, so you don't want to overcomplicate the scale because each one of these little cubes is one unit in the scale here. So you don't want to stretch your objects too much. It also would make the object look a little weird too, so it's a good idea not to do that. So we'll unlock that, and then relock this one. So we'll do random scale. Put all these objects in there. Now this is our second layer, so I think I want to make these just a bit wider. And then we'll make these 0.5 all length. We don't want to get too far out of hand. And then we repeat the last step, or repeat the step on the last one. We do want to random rotate these two, but I think getting the scale going first will be good enough for this video. And then our final set, let's just throw some random numbers in here. Get some weirdness going. Now I'm going to apply that just so it saves to all my prefabs. I'll edit it later if I need to. And we just basically have to hit start and stop to see it randomize. Now the big trick would be getting that seed going. And yeah, this is where I was talking about we don't want to randomize too much because now that looks a little funky. But I think with a little bit of work of getting the scaling going and toying around with the settings and messing with that rotation and everything else, maybe even getting that seed going, I think this will work. But I'll go ahead and stop this video and see you guys later.